Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to introduce today's presentation on a fascinating figure from medieval England. We'll be exploring a comprehensive study of the trilingual poet, John Gower. This slide highlights his key works, including Vox Clamantis and Confessio Amantis, and his broader literary contributions. We'll also touch on his relationship with Geoffrey Chaucer and his significance as a medieval English poet. Over the next few slides, we'll delve into his life, his writings, and his influence on English literature. Let's get started. Let's take a closer look at the theme of legacy and influence. This section highlights how Gower's work has left a lasting mark on literature and language. We'll explore his distinctive language and style, which set him apart from his contemporaries. It's also important to consider his relationship with other literary figures like Chaucer, as their interactions and similarities offer valuable insights. Additionally, we'll examine Gower's minor works and Latin poems, which, although less famous, contribute to his overall influence. The themes and allegories woven throughout his writings reveal much about medieval society and moral values. Finally, understanding the structure of Confessio Amantis helps us appreciate its craftsmanship and enduring significance. All of these elements connect to the broader picture of Gower's legacy and ongoing influence in the literary world. Let's take a closer look at who John Gower was. First, we'll explore his life, background, and identity. Gower was a significant figure in medieval England, known primarily as a poet and a friend of Chaucer. He came from a well-educated, possibly middle-class family, which allowed him to pursue his literary interests. His background was quite diverse, and it influenced the themes and styles of his work. Understanding his life helps us see how his personal experiences shaped his writing. Gower's identity as a poet was also closely tied to the social and political currents of his time. Throughout this presentation, we'll see how his life and background contributed to his unique voice and perspective in medieval literature. Today, we're looking at the final part of John Gower's life and legacy. He was buried at St. Saviour's Church, which is now known as Southwark Cathedral. Remarkably, his tomb still exists today, serving as a lasting reminder of his importance. Around the year 1400, Gower lost his sight, a difficult turning point in his life. In his famous work, the Confessio Amantis, there's a clear reference to his declining health, indicating how much this affected him. Gower also had connections to Henry Bolingbroke, who later became King Henry IV. It was Bolingbroke who commissioned the Confessio Amantis, highlighting Gower's close ties to influential patrons. Speaking of his background, Gower was a wealthy gentleman from the landowning class, not a cleric or court official, so he was well off and connected to the secular world. He was a true trilingual poet, writing in French, Latin, and English, which was extremely rare at the time. This linguistic versatility helped him reach a broad audience across different regions. Gower was born around 1330, probably in Kent or Yorkshire, and he died around 1408 in Southwark, near London. His life spanned a fascinating period of English history, and his work continues to offer us valuable insights into that era. Let's take a moment to consider what life was like in England during Gower's lifetime, as this really helps us understand the context in which he was writing. The historical backdrop includes significant events like the late medieval period, which was marked by social and political upheaval. This was a time of both conflict and change, shaping the themes and perspectives in Gower's work. Literarily, the period was rich with developments in poetic form and language, paving the way for the more personal and introspective style Gower is known for. Understanding these elements helps us see how his writing reflects the concerns and ideas of his time, making his contributions all the more meaningful within the broader tapestry of English literature. Connecting this to our overall theme, recognizing the historical and literary environment allows us to appreciate Gower not just as a poet, but as a voice shaped by and responding to the world around him. Let's explore the literary and historical context of this period. Gower was a close friend and contemporary of Geoffrey Chaucer, and he played a crucial role during the age when French, Latin, and English all thrived as literary languages. This era marked the rise of English as a prestigious literary medium, helping to establish it as a serious language for moral and poetic expression. Gower, in particular, contributed to this shift, showing that English could carry weighty moral poetry. On the political side, England was experiencing significant upheaval. During Richard II's reign from 1377 to 1399, we see a court characterized by patronage and luxury, leading eventually to Richard's deposition. After that, Henry Bolingbroke seized power and became Henry IV, with Gower supporting him during this transition. The period also saw the Peasants' Revolt of 1381, which Gower addressed directly in his work Vox Clementes, highlighting the social tensions of the time. Meanwhile, the 100 Years' War was ongoing, stretching England's resources and challenging its sense of national identity. All these factors, the political turbulence, the social upheaval, and the cultural shifts, set the stage for a rich and complex literary landscape that reflects the broader upheavals of 14th and 15th century England. Today, I want to talk about The Mirror of Man, which is Gower's French moral epic, also known as Mirror de l'Homme. This work is a fascinating example of medieval literature that aims to reflect human virtues and vices through a moral lens. Gower uses this epic to offer a kind of moral mirror, encouraging readers to examine their own behavior and character. It's not just a story, it's a didactic tool designed to teach ethical lessons. The title itself, The Mirror of Man, emphasizes the idea that literature can serve as a reflection of humanity, showing us our strengths and flaws. This aligns well with the overall theme of the presentation, which explores how medieval writers used literature to shape moral understanding and social values. Gower's work stands out because it combines storytelling with moral instruction, making it both engaging and instructive. The manuscript for Mirror de l'Homme was lost for many centuries, but it was rediscovered in the 19th century at the Bibliothèque Nationale. This rediscovery allowed scholars to reconnect with this important work. It was originally written for the Anglo-French literate aristocracy of England, targeting an educated upper-class audience familiar with both languages. The core of the work is a comprehensive moral taxonomy of sin, covering pride, envy, wrath, avarice, sloth, gluttony, and lust, along with their offspring or related sins. The key theme of the poem is structured into 3 parts. First, exploring the genealogy of sin. Second, showing how vices attack virtues. And finally, presenting redemption through the Virgin Mary. The structure reflects its historical context, created between around 1376 and 1379, before the Peasants' Revolt. It's an extensive work, totaling nearly 30,000 lines, making it Gower's longest single piece. The language used is Anglo-French, specifically the Old French dialect spoken by the English upper class, which highlights its audience and social setting. In essence, Mirror de l'Homme is a vast penitential poem, almost 30,000 octosyllabic lines, surveying the sins of all classes of medieval society. It's an allegorical moral work that offers a deep reflection on human vice and virtue, fitting into the broader theme of moral and spiritual guidance during the Middle Ages. Now, let's turn our attention to one of Gower's most remarkable works, Vox Clementes, which translates to the voice of one crying. This Latin masterpiece is a powerful reflection of the social and political turmoil of the 14th century. Gower uses this work to express his concerns and observations about the state of England during his time. It's not just a poetic piece, it's a call to awareness and action, embodying the voice of someone witnessing chaos and injustice. As we explore this, keep in mind how Gower's voice aligns with the broader themes of societal critique and moral reflection that permeate his work. This piece really exemplifies the way medieval writers used their craft to comment on their world, urging readers to reflect and consider change. This slide highlights some interesting background about Vox Clementes. Originally, the work was dedicated to Archbishop Arundel, but later it was revised to address King Henry IV, which shows how the text evolved in response to the political climate. The title, Vox Clementes, translates to the voice of the crying out, and it uses the famous allegory of a ship of state tossed on stormy seas to symbolize England's turbulent times. This allegory is a key image in the poem, reflecting the widespread social and political disorder of the period. The work is essentially a systematic critique of all social estates, clergy, knights, lawyers, merchants, and peasants, highlighting the unrest across different layers of society. It's divided into books, with books II through VII presenting a dream vision where peasants are transformed into monstrous animals attacking the social order, symbolizing chaos and rebellion. The first book, on the other hand, is directly inspired by the peasants' revolt of June 1381, capturing the immediate social upheaval of that time. The poem was composed roughly between 1381 and 1386, with revisions extending into the 1390s, demonstrating its ongoing engagement with contemporary issues. It's quite a substantial work, around 10,265 lines, written in Latin elegiac couplets, the same meter used by Ovid, which lends it a poetic elegance. Overall, Vox Clamentis is a powerful Latin elegiac poem that reflects on the social disorder sparked by the peasants' revolt and the broader tensions in England during this tumultuous period. It combines allegory, critique, and poetic skill to voice the concerns and chaos of that era. Now let's turn our attention to what is often considered Gower's most famous work, the Confessio Amantis. This is truly a masterpiece of English literature. The title itself, which translates to The Lover's Confession, reflects the central theme of love and the human experience of longing and desire. Gower uses this poetic form to explore the complexities of love, morality, and the human condition. It's written in a way that's both engaging and instructive, blending storytelling with moral lessons. What makes Confessio Amantis particularly significant is how it encapsulates the medieval worldview, emphasizing both the spiritual and earthly aspects of love. Throughout the poem, Gower invites us into the confessional of a lover, making it a personal and universal reflection on love's trials and triumphs. In the context of our overall theme, this work exemplifies the blending of literary artistry with moral and philosophical inquiry that characterizes much of medieval literature. It's a perfect example of how writers used storytelling not just to entertain, but to teach and explore deeper truths. This slide highlights some of the key facts about Confessio Amantis. First, it survives in about 49 manuscripts, making it one of the most widely read Middle English poems after Chaucer. So, it was quite popular in its time. The story is framed around a confessor, who is depicted as a genius or priest of Venus, listening to Ammons confess his sins against love. This framing device allows the poem to explore various tales and lessons. The tales themselves draw from a variety of sources: classical myths from Ovid's Metamorphoses, biblical stories, and medieval legends, creating a rich tapestry of references. The poem is written in octosyllabic couplets, which gives it a smooth, conversational flow, deliberately easy to read and remember. It was composed around 1386 to 1390, and then revised a few years later, around 1392 to 1393, with some changes like the dedication, shifting from Richard II to Henry IV. The poem is massive, about 33,000 lines, making it one of the longest in Middle English literature. It's written in the London dialect of Middle English, which made it accessible and polished for readers of the time. Overall, Confessio Amantis is a significant work because it combines a romantic confessional framework with a broad array of classical and medieval storytelling traditions, all in a language that aimed to be both engaging and approachable. Today, I want to talk about the structure of Confessio Amantis, which is quite fascinating. The title itself, 8 books, 8 sins, countless tales, gives us a hint of how the work is organized. Essentially, the poem is divided into 8 distinct sections, each corresponding to one of the deadly sins. This structure helps to explore moral and ethical themes systematically, making it easier for readers to follow the moral lessons. Within each of these sections, there are numerous stories and allegories that illustrate the nature and consequences of each sin. Think of it as a journey through human weakness, where each sin is examined from different angles through various tales. What's particularly interesting is how this setup not only emphasizes the universality of these sins, but also allows the poet to weave in a wide array of stories, making the work rich and diverse. Overall, this structure connects to the broader theme of the presentation: the way medieval literature uses organized moral frameworks to educate and influence. By dividing the work into these 8 parts, Chaucer, through Confessio Amantes, invites us to reflect on our own moral choices and the human condition. Let's explore slide 14, which reveals the structure of our story through the tale of Apollonius of Tyre and the theme of Ammon's being too old for love. We begin with the concept of lust, found in Book VII, where we also see a digression on education, highlighting Aristotle teaching Alexander the Great, emphasizing the importance of wisdom alongside desire. Moving backward to Book VII, we encounter stories about drunkenness and lust, including the tale of Nectanebus, which illustrates how excess can lead to downfall. In Book VI, the longest book, we find tales of Jason and Medea, along with Florent, who serves as a proto-wife of Bath, showing different facets of desire and relationships. Book V shifts focus to avarice, with stories about greed's grip, while Book IV explores laziness in love through the stories of Pygmalion and Iphis and Ianthe. Then, in Book III, we see wrath expressed through tales like Diomed and Chryside, and the story of Canis and Machair, illustrating how anger can consume us. Book II delves into envy with stories of Narcissus, Mundus, and Paulina, and the trump of death, highlighting destructive jealousy. Finally, Book I sets the stage with themes of pride, framing England's decay, and where Ammons encounters genius. This structure, 8 books in total, each addressing one of the 7 deadly sins plus a final book, gives us a comprehensive look at human flaws and virtues. It's a layered narrative that not only explores these sins, but also connects them to the broader theme of moral and spiritual growth. This overall design underscores the importance of self-awareness and moral reflection, which are central to the entire presentation. So let's dive into what Gower's poetry is really about. When we look at his work, one of the key aspects to focus on is the themes and allegory. Gower doesn't just write on the surface. His poetry is layered with deeper meanings and messages. These themes often reflect moral, spiritual, and social concerns of his time, but they also carry universal lessons that resonate even today. Allegory plays a significant role here, serving as a way for Gower to embed complex ideas within stories and symbols. This technique allows him to communicate his messages more subtly and powerfully, encouraging the reader to think beyond the literal. By understanding these themes and allegorical elements, we gain a richer appreciation of his work. It connects to our overall exploration of Gower's significance as a poet who used his craft to comment on human nature, morality, and society. So, in essence, Gower's poetry isn't just about storytelling. It's about exploring the deeper truths that underlie human experience. Gower consistently links individual sins to broader social disorder. When a ruler is corrupt, a merchant dishonest, or a priest lazy, it impacts everyone and harms the entire commonwealth. This highlights how personal morality directly influences social stability. Moving to social order and justice, we see that fortune's wheel is always turning in these tales. Sometimes great men fall, reminding us that humility and virtue are the only true sources of lasting stability. It's a reminder that external success isn't guaranteed, and that inner virtue is key. Next, Gower draws from classical learning, especially Ovid's Metamorphoses, to enrich his moral stories. He adapts these myths for an English audience, emphasizing moral lessons. This connection to classical tradition demonstrates the importance of education and cultural heritage in understanding morality. In Book VII, the focus shifts to political philosophy. Gower discusses that the ideal king must govern himself before he can govern others. This idea aligns with the Mirror for Princes tradition, where rulers are encouraged to be self-aware and virtuous to lead effectively. The confessional framework in the poem invites both Ammons and us, the readers, to examine each sin carefully. It encourages self-knowledge, which Gower sees as essential for moral health and reform. Recognizing our faults is the first step toward betterment. Romantic love is another major theme. Through hundreds of tales, Gower explores how love can enslave lovers, often at the cost of reason and virtue. Ammons, the narrator, symbolizes every lover caught in passion's grip, showing the dangers of letting love override wisdom. Overall, these themes intertwine to present a comprehensive view of morality, social order, and personal virtue, emphasizing that individual actions and internal virtues shape the health of the entire society. Now let's turn to the final and most elaborate story Gower presents. This is a tale full of intense themes like loss, incest, shipwreck, and ultimately reunion. Interestingly, Shakespeare directly drew from this story when creating Pericles, Prince of Tyre in 1608. Moving on, Apollonius of Tyre, found in Book VIII, offers the most extensive classical retelling within Gower's poem. It's a story rich with adventure and tragedy. What's particularly noteworthy is how Gower portrays Medea with sympathy. She's shown more as a betrayed woman rather than a monster, which foreshadows later feminist retellings of her story. Next, in Book V, we encounter the tale of Jason and Medea, which is based on the Ovidian legend of star-crossed lovers separated by a wall. This story directly anticipates Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, as well as A Midsummer Night's Dream, with its themes of love, separation, and longing. Then there's the story of Pyramus and Thisbe in Book III. It's a classic narrative about two lovers who are kept apart by a wall, and it involves a knight who must solve a riddle or face death. A loathly lady offers him the answer in exchange for marriage, and this tale is actually the earliest English version of the loathly lady motif, which Chaucer later adapted in The Wife of Bath's Tale. Finally, we see highlights from Gower's storytelling in Book I, which set the stage for the rich tapestry of Thales in Confessio Amantes. These stories aren't just entertainment. They serve to explore moral and philosophical themes that resonate through the entire work. In sum, these tales exemplify Gower's skill in blending classical and medieval stories, all while connecting to broader themes of love, betrayal, and human folly that run throughout his work. Now, let's take a closer look at Gower's other literary contributions, focusing on his minor works and Latin poems. While he's best known for his major writings, these smaller pieces are quite revealing about his versatility and interests. His minor works include various shorter texts that often explore personal, moral, or philosophical themes. These pieces, though less extensive, still showcase his skill with language and his reflective nature. In addition, Gower composed Latin poems, which were quite common among scholars of his time. These Latin works often served educational or commemorative purposes, and they highlight his classical learning and his ability to adapt to different literary styles. Together, these contributions help us see a fuller picture of Gower, not just as a major poet, but as a versatile writer engaged with multiple genres and audiences. They also underscore the broader theme of his literary versatility and intellectual curiosity, which run throughout his career. Now, let's take a closer look at some of the shorter Latin poems that Gower inserted into his manuscripts. These snippets often serve as moral commentaries or summaries of the sections they accompany, providing insight into his thoughts and themes. Among these are various Latin epigrams and verses, which showcase his skill in concise, impactful writing. One notable example is a short English poem of 385 lines addressed to King Henry IV. In this poem, Gower urges peace rather than war with France, reflecting his political pragmatism. It's one of his last English compositions and highlights his concern for stability and diplomacy during turbulent times. Moving on, we see a Latin chronicle poem called the Chronica Tripartita, written around 1400. It's divided into 3 parts and describes the reign of Richard II and his eventual deposition by Henry Bolingbroke. This work is strongly pro-Lancastrian, revealing Gower's political loyalties and his way of shaping historical narrative through poetry. Gower also composed a series of 18 French ballads on marital fidelity, known as Tradier pour Exemplar les Amants Mariats. These poems tell classical and biblical stories about faithful or unfaithful lovers, often included in manuscripts of his famous work, Confessio Amantes. They reinforce themes of love, fidelity, and morality. Another significant collection is the Cinquante Ballades, a sequence of 50 courtly love ballads written in Anglo-French, dedicated to Henry IV. These lyrics are elegant and polished, embodying the French court poetry tradition. They are considered among the finest French lyrics produced in England, showcasing Gower's versatility and mastery across languages and genres. Overall, these diverse works demonstrate Gower's prolific output and his ability to adapt his poetic voice to different languages and audiences, always with an eye toward moral, political, and cultural reflection. They enrich our understanding of his role as a versatile and influential medieval poet. Now, on this slide, we're looking at two of the most influential figures in Middle English literature, Gower and Chaucer. These two were not only rivals in their time, but also great friends, and their works really shaped the development of English literary tradition. Gower, known for his moral and allegorical poetry, brought a philosophical depth to his writing, often exploring themes of virtue and morality. Chaucer, on the other hand, is celebrated for his vivid storytelling and his pioneering use of the vernacular, especially in the Canterbury Tales, which offers a rich tapestry of medieval society. What's fascinating is how their relationship reflects the broader cultural landscape. Competition pushed each of them to excel, but mutual respect kept their work connected. Both men contributed uniquely to the evolution of Middle English literature, blending their personal styles with the social and literary currents of their time. Understanding their rivalry and friendship helps us see how collaboration and competition can drive artistic innovation, which ties into our overall theme of how Middle English literature blossomed through diverse voices and shared influences. Let's take a closer look at the relationship between Chaucer and Gower. We know they were close friends, and Chaucer actually dedicated his work Troilus and Chrysaide to Gower, which shows a certain level of respect and camaraderie. Their relationship was quite complex, playful, ironic, and often ambiguous, but also earnest and didactic when needed. Both writers used tone effectively, blending entertainment with keen human observation. Their goal wasn't just to amuse. They aimed to promote moral reform in society through their stories and characters. Their works are diverse in tone, ironic, dramatic, humorous, and often carry a moral message that's carefully crafted, polished, and systematic. When we talk about their style, Chaucer is best known for the Canterbury Tales, a collection that captures a wide range of voices and social classes, while Gower's Confessio Amantis reflects a more didactic approach. In terms of major works, Chaucer's writings are primarily in English, making his work accessible to a broader audience, though he was also literate in French and Latin. Gower, on the other hand, was also multilingual. He knew French, Latin, and English, reflecting his background. Considering their backgrounds, Chaucer was the son of a vintner who rose to become a royal servant, indicating a rise in social status. Gower was a wealthy gentleman, which also influenced their perspectives and the way they approached their writing. Their lives spanned roughly the same period, Chaucer from around 1343 to 1400, and Gower from about 1330 to 1408, which places them squarely in the late 14th century, a dynamic time for English literature. In summary, Gower and Chaucer were not only contemporaries, but also intellectual peers who influenced each other. Their relationship, marked by mutual respect and differing styles, helped shape the development of English literature, connecting the moral and the entertaining in a way that continues to resonate today. Let's talk about how Gower wrote across 3 languages, which is really quite fascinating. When we look at his work, it's clear that he was not just a master of English, but also engaged deeply with Latin and French. This multilingual approach allowed him to reach broader audiences and to incorporate a rich diversity of stylistic influences. In terms of language and style, Gower's writing reflects a unique blend of these traditions. His use of Latin, for example, often lent a formal, scholarly tone to his work, emphasizing its serious and moral aims. French, on the other hand, brought a certain elegance and accessibility, making his ideas more appealing to a wider readership. What's really important here is that this linguistic versatility wasn't just about switching languages. It was a strategic choice that shaped his style and helped him communicate complex ideas more effectively. It also demonstrates his adaptability as a writer, able to navigate different cultural and literary traditions. So, in the broader context of his work, Gower's multilingualism highlights his role as a bridge between different worlds, literary, cultural, and linguistic, and it enriches our understanding of his enduring influence. Let's take a closer look at the language styles used in these key works. First, we see the use of smooth, accessible octosyllabic couplets, which were common in the London dialect, quite close to Chaucer's English. This deliberately plain style aimed for clarity and moral purpose, helping to legitimize English as a serious literary language. For example, in works like Confessio Amantis and In Praise of Peace, Chaucer employed this straightforward poetic form. Moving on, Chaucer also utilized classical Latin elegiac couplets, following Ovid's tradition, especially for serious and authoritative subjects. Latin gave his political commentary a universal prestige and was filled with biblical and classical allusions, adding depth and universality to his works like Vox Clamantis and Chronica Tripartita. Then we see the influence of Anglo-French, which was the language of the English aristocracy. Chaucer used octosyllabic couplets and ballad stanzas in French, with elegant and elevated diction, perfect for moral and courtly themes. This style signals his social status and European connections, as seen in works like Mirror de l'Âme and Cinquante Ballades. Lastly, Chaucer's craft was truly trilingual. He crafted his poetry across these languages, English, Latin, and French, each serving a different purpose and audience. This multilingual and multi-style approach exemplifies his versatility and strategic use of language to reach diverse audiences, reinforcing the overall richness of his literary contribution. Let's take a moment to consider Gower's place in literary history. His legacy and influence are truly significant. Gower was a pioneer in blending medieval traditions with emerging humanist ideas, which helped shape the course of English literature. His work laid the groundwork for later writers who sought to explore moral and philosophical themes in a more accessible way. His influence extended beyond his immediate time, inspiring a range of writers and poets who followed. You can see echoes of his approach in the way they integrated moral lessons with literary artistry. Gower's contributions helped elevate the status of the English vernacular and demonstrated its potential for serious literary expression. Overall, his legacy is one of innovation and bridge building, connecting the medieval world with the Renaissance and influencing the development of English literary tradition. As we move forward in this presentation, keep in mind how his work set the stage for future generations of writers to explore new themes and styles. Let's talk about how the TEAMS Middle English Text Series and the John Gower Society have played a crucial role in reviving Gower scholarship. Thanks to their efforts, Gower is now studied seriously alongside giants like Chaucer and Langland, which shows how much his work has gained recognition. Moving on to his tomb at Southwark Cathedral, it's quite remarkable. The elaborate paintings on his tomb depict him resting his head on his three major works, serving as a unique self-monument that highlights his literary identity and the importance he placed on his writings. What's particularly interesting about Gower is his trilingualism. No other major medieval English poet produced works of comparable length in 3 different languages. This linguistic versatility reflects the complex cultural identity of 14th century England, where multiple languages and influences coexisted. And speaking of his reputation, Chaucer called Gower the moral Gower in the dedication of Troilus and Chryside. This label stuck for centuries and shaped how readers approached his work, emphasizing the moral and ethical dimensions of his poetry. Did you know that Shakespeare used Gower's tale of Apollonius of Tyre as the main source for his play Pericles, Prince of Tyre? In fact, Shakespeare even placed Gower on stage as the narrator of the play in 1608, which shows how Gower's influence extended well beyond his own time. So, why does John Gower still matter today? His legacy and influence are profound, not only because of his innovative multilingual works, but also because of how he shaped literary traditions and inspired later writers. His contributions continue to be relevant, reminding us of the rich, diverse cultural fabric of medieval England. And here we see a quote from Gower himself. "For I the worth I Gower this book have due to write." This highlights his humility and sense of duty in writing. John Gower, born around 1330 and passing away in 1408, was one of the most learned and prolific poets of medieval England. He was truly a multilingual author, composing major works in French with Mirror de l'Homme, in Latin with Vox Clamantis, and most famously in English with Confessio Amantis. Confessio Amantis, which spans roughly 33,000 lines, is considered his masterpiece. It's a major moral and literary achievement that can stand alongside Chaucer's work in significance. Interestingly, Gower's tales from Confessio Amantis served as direct sources for Shakespeare's play Pericles. And Shakespeare himself paid tribute to Gower by placing him on stage as the narrator, which was a remarkable honor in medieval times. Chaucer called Gower the moral Gower, reflecting his reputation as a moral and literary pillar. Together with Chaucer, Gower is considered one of the twin pillars of Middle English literature. So, in summary, Gower's work is crucial because it bridges languages, influences later writers like Shakespeare, and embodies the moral and literary ideals of his time. His contribution remains central to understanding medieval English literature and its enduring legacy.